Hello and welcome to ChatterBox, the show where we literally chat boxing. I'm Josh Denzel and I'm joined by my regular sparring partner and two-weight world champion, Carl Frampton. Now, Carl, before we bring in our first guest, I was reminded recently about the time that you left Tom Hardy, Ed Sheeran, and the World Stone Raider in the dust to be named Britain's coolest man. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Because the World Stone Raider, I understand.
Hey ho, who's got the trophy? You know what
Do
I
you just
mean?
carry it around with you?
I have it everywhere I go, yeah. 2015, it was a decent year. I had a good year. I'd beat Quig. I'd I'd unified that division and I moved up, fought Santa Cruz. So it was a big year for me, and I was nominated as one of 15. When I was nominated for it, I was the only one retweeted it, so no one else cared about it. So everybody that kind of followed me and a lot of my support would have voted for me, and I think I rumped home that year.
I like it. There's like a Chinese betting syndicate behind this. I think this is that's what's really been happening, Cole. Right, before I get myself into trouble, let me tell you what's coming up in the show. We're going to be talking to Derek Chisora, Frank Warren, following the announcement of Derek's fight with Tyson Fury, the trilogy live on BT Sport pay-per-view on December 3rd. We'll also be chatting to British middleweight champion Denzel Bentley ahead of his world title fight next month. And finally, journalist and broadcaster Tris Dixon will be sharing his views on the issue of drugs in boxing and what we can do to stamp it out. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to say we're joined by the legend, the man himself, Derek Chisora.
Derek Chisora!
Derek, the trilogy's on. Talk to me.
I'm buzzing.
It's 8 years. It's 8 years, Derek, since you last fought each other. I think I've been around for most of those fights in the last 8 years, quite close to you. How have you changed since that last fight with Tyson Fury? And can you beat him this time?
This time, yeah. When he was with Peter Fury, it was a very tricky fighter because, Peter Fury is a very tricky coach. He likes to surprise fighters. But I think with this American trainer, if he's still training with this American trainer, Tyson's very strong and very big. So he's been trained just use your strength and your size and just go forward. So that'll be interesting. But you never know. So for me, the biggest thing I got right now is I'm sparring two people. I got orthodox and I got southpaws in the gym I'm sparring with. Because you never know what he's going to come out as.
That's the right approach, I think, Derek. It's always, I imagine, to prepare for someone like Fury, it's difficult just because his style changes so much.
It's difficult. What's difficult is because no heavyweight out there fights like Tyson. You get bigger guys, but they don't move like him. So it's difficult. It's hard. It's hard for him to get other fighters who fight like me, who must go my defensive. So it's difficult. Only God knows what's gonna happen on December the 3rd.
Dillian White, I thought, was a bit disappointing, and it was an easy night for Tyson. But is there a chance that the 3 fights with Wilder has taken something away from Fury? Because they were all pretty brutal.
No, I don't think so. I don't ever look at it like that. The guy I saw a couple of days ago, he's giving me a big opportunity, and enough respect to that. But at the same time, he is on point. He wants to fight. He wants to fight. He wants to have a go. He's still hungry. He wants to be the pound fighter, heavyweight in the world. The last guy we saw that was Lennox Lewis. So he wants to do that right now by next year. So he's on point. He knows exactly what he wants to do.
No doubt. Now, Derek, if you do pull off what would be, we have to say, a huge upset, presumably you're taking on Usyk for all the belts. And Usyk's a guy that you acquitted yourself well against in the past. So I know people said that you easily could have had you winning that fight. So presumably you fancy your chances in that fight if it all goes well against Tyson.
I'll be honest. On the Usyk fight, I was winning. I won that fight. I knocked him down. They didn't give it to me. This is a problem. you know. And I just hope for this fight on December 3rd that it will be a fair judging and a fair ref, you know, because there's so much going on in this camp for me. You know, I don't want people to be biased. I just want people to come in with open mind and be fair, you know, because I know for a fact that I'm not coming to lay down, and he's not coming to lay down. So we just wanted to be. I just wanted to be fair, basically.
You've got a relatively strange relationship with Tyson Fury. I've seen him FaceTime you, and it starts off, really nice. And how you doing, brother? Then it ends up in a shouting match, and someone hangs up. It will text you random insults, and you go back and forth. But the press conference was very respectful, and there was no tables thrown. There was no craziness.
You know what? Yeah, I think we can't get in each other's heads because there's nothing in there. He can't play mind games with me, and I can't play mind games with him. Do you understand? Because we from the same cloth. We from the streets. Do you understand? We can sit here and look at each other and we already know what we're thinking about. So for him to come and start trying to insult me, and then me trying to insult him, it's not fair on both of us. It's just like us, not being true to ourselves, because his mind is very strong and my mind is very strong. So there's no mind games. So what we can only actually do for each other is just talk politely about each other and just let the gloves go in the ring.
You're at a part of time of your career where, people say, Derek should retire this, Derek should retire that, and you refuse, and you keep refusing. And personally, I think you're going to box forever and ever and ever, right? But I want to go back to the beginning. Like, talk to me, because you've not had the normal route into boxing. You don't have the normal, I've just gone down to a gym at 14, 15 in my local area, come from Zimbabwe, come to the UK. How important has boxing been in your life? And I know you've had, I know you got yourself into trouble over the years in general, but has it kept you out of proper trouble? And talk me through that.
You know what? Boxing for me, I'll tell you what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. I've been trying to find my probation officer. His name was Peter Yates. He's the man who brought me into boxing. He's the man who got the Metropolis to fund me for my boxing boots, my boxing gloves, because at one point there was nothing happening in my life apart from me getting into trouble. And one day I went to see him, and he goes to me, "Have you ever tried boxing?" I'm like, "I only know Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson in boxing." I said, and he goes, "Let me introduce you to two brothers," and he introduced me to John Oliver and Jim Oliver. God rest his soul, Jim Oliver. And then from then I just fell in love with boxing. So it's just one of those things, you stumble in things where you don't know the talent you have, It's like, I keep saying this: boxing is a poor man's sport. If you are poor, you will box. Do you understand? And then it will pay you at the end of the sport. Carl can be sitting there. Carl's a rich man now, but when he came in the game, he's dead broke. Parents were not making money. Same here. Same as AJ. Boxing is a poor man's sport. It's not a rich man's sport. People become rich afterwards. But before that, everybody in boxing, they were so poor and broke. Yeah, they didn't know what to do with their lives. Then they go into boxing. So boxing for me it's one of those things, one of those sports that I hold dear to my heart, because it done so many things for me, So when I see when people are doing certain things in the game and not respecting the game, I respect the game. What I do to get people to talk about it. But when I see, fighters is not doing the right work, when I say disrespecting the game, I mean, like, you get fighters who are fighting for a big fight, they don't train, they don't make weight, and they have to pay fines and stuff. That is disrespecting the game, But, boxing for me is unbelievable. It's great. It's one of those sports, like, you tell yourself you're retiring from it. After 4 days, man, you're back over working in the studio, like my man here, or you're back in the gym training some other fighters. You can't just, it's in the blood. When you
Derek,
start that.
see when the money's made. Marvin Hagler's famous quote was, it's hard to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning when you're sleeping in silk pajamas. So once the money's made, where does the motivation come from after that?
You see, I think I haven't had made any money. That's why I still wake up at 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock to run, bro. But I still sleep in silk pajamas. Do you understand? It's just, listen, you tell yourself that, for me, I always respected myself. I respect myself in a way that I tell myself I have to be up at 5 o'clock. By 5:30, I have to be outside my gate and running my 4 miles. Yeah, that's my respect for myself. If I don't, that means I don't respect myself as a man. If you respect yourself as a man, if you tell yourself something, if you write something in a diary, you have to do it. And afterwards you feel great. Like today, I woke up at 10 to 6. By 6:30, I was in the gym doing my Versa climber. You know, yes, even when you got money, but it's the same thing. When you got money and you love the game and you love the training and the hard work, bro, you do it. Because sometimes it's like the feeling, it's one of those things.
Derek, absolute pleasure. It's always a blessing to speak to you. Go look after yourself and enjoy camp. I'll see you soon. Right, coming up after the break, we'll be joined by Hall of Famer Frank Warren. We'll be talking about Fury Chisora 3 and the rest of the heavyweight division, of course, and the other fights he has on the horizon. Welcome back. Before we're joined by Hall of Fame promoter Frank Warren, let's see him talk about the reasoning behind picking Derek Chisora for that incredible trilogy fight happening on December the 3rd.
These are box rec. These are the independent rankings that everybody uses, yeah? So number 1 is Usyk. Just told you he's out. Number 2 is Joshua. Didn't want to know. Deontay Wilder. Fought over the weekend. He's not available. Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz now looks like he's fighting Wilder for the eliminator. Dillian White. He just beat Dillian White. Joe Joyce. He's not going to be available. He just had a fight. He's on holiday. Luis Ortiz. He got beat a couple of weeks, when it was a month ago or something. Joseph Parker got beaten by Joe Joyce, and the next one in on the independent rankings is Derek Chisora, and the one after that is Pula, who he knocked out.
Frank, I can imagine it's been a busy week for you. Talk me through it.
Well, it's been a bit. I mean, it's eased off now. It was a busy week last week, and or quite a busy month, I should say. We were trying to do various things that didn't transpire, but then we got on to Derek. We had to draw a line under everything, get on with get on with Tyson's fight. He wanted to fight on the 3rd. It's very important he does fight this year because, all things going well on the 3rd, he will then fight Usyk early next year. So he needed to get another fight under his belt. And we got the highest available contender in Derek Chisora. So it is what it is. Thankfully, the fans have got behind it. We sold well over 50,000 tickets now. So we're moving forwards for a sellout. I'm convinced of that. And it's all systems go. I'm just looking forward to the 3rd and getting it on and, seeing Tyson back in the ring again.
Are you surprised, Frank, by the 50,000 selling on day one? I kind of expected the draw of Fury, and Chisora had his own support as well, and 2 big characters. I always imagined it would sell out, but 50,000 in day one shows you the interest there is in this fight.
Well, it does show the interest in it, and Tyson with Tyson. There's no doubt about that. I mean, last time, Carl, when we was with the Dillian White fight, we sold out in 2 hours. So 50,000, and let's get it right. I know the fight's been panned in certain areas and some negativity in certain areas, but bearing that all in mind, there are people who want to see the fight, and they've proved it by pulling up their hard-earned cash to be there.
I think, with Derek Chisora, you know what you're going to get. With Tyson Fury, I think they're probably the 2 best salesmen in boxing. So even though, what social media is like, the uproar that you get, and it happens before a lot of big fights, I think that you'll see the mood change. And do you expect that mood to change when, we see them face-to-face more often and that fight week really starts?
Look, the press conference last week, Carl was there for, you guys were there for it, but Carl was there last week, and he wasn't very, very accommodating, Derek. He kept saying he's got a gag order on him, which was, absolute what he had on it. What he tried to do is hook me up for more money. And I said to him, I don't need to pay you to throw over tables or do stuff like that. Tyson sells. Tyson Fury sells, as has been proven. So, he's got to engage now. He's going to have to engage with his fans and with the public, and I hope he'll do that. And I expect by the time by fight night, I think everybody's going to be really, really up for watching it, because for Derek, where does he go? He's got nowhere to go. This is it. This is his last chance of ever fighting for a world title, let alone winning it. And the only way he can win this fight, he's not going to outbox Tyson Fury in a million years, in my opinion. But he can punch. And the fact is, his style is going to be coming forward, and he's going to be trying to close down and put it on Tyson. So you're going to get an exciting fight whilst it lasts.
I put this question to Tyson, and he agreed with me, Frank, and I wouldn't mind putting it to you just to see your opinion on it. But I says that your new style, Tyson plants his feet a bit more, he doesn't move like he used to. Does that give Derek a better opportunity? And Tyson agreed that it makes a better fight, but it also, he said that it gives Derek a bit of a chance.
Well, it does, and he has. I mean, both of their styles have changed from the fight they had, which I put it on, by the way, back in 2014. Tyson was a hit and move. Now, as you quite rightly say, and he said himself, Carl, that now he's been planting his feet. He's got with Sugar Hill, who's been really an advocate of that. He showed that in both the last two fights he had with Wilder. I mean, they were basically at times a bit of a shootout. And he's also showed is, I mean, and you look at his record, he stops a lot of opponents, but he's stopping them emphatically now.
Absolutely. I think the main reason for the discontent is probably the big furore and the issue of the AJ fight falling through. I want to know from you, I know you make a big bet with Tyson. Do you think this will ever happen? Because I know the boxing fans want it, the public want it. I know everyone in Britain wants to see who's the best. I know you feel like Fury's obviously streets ahead of AJ, but that's still a fight that's going to do big numbers.
Well, I think everybody in Britain, including myself, wanted it, but unfortunately the other side didn't want it. So it weren't everybody in Britain. They just didn't want to know. I think at the end of the day, Tyson, if he comes through on the third, which I think he will, because I think he's the best heavyweight out there by none, his next fight will be for the unification with Usyk. And if he comes through that, which again I hope he will and believe he will, then he'll be looking at Joe Joyce. So the situation is really simple, is that, AJ's down the list. And for AJ, I think what's going to be more interesting now is who's he going to be fighting. I mean, it's two great fights out there for him if they want to make it. And for the fans, great fights for the fans. That's Joe Joyce or Daniel Dubois. They're great fights. So there's some really good domestic, world-class heavyweight fights to be made.
Would you be happy, Frank, to put Dubois or Joyce in with AJ? And how do you think that both guys beat him?
I do. I think if you're going to fight him, now's the time to fight him. I think he's vulnerable. I think he's not hard to hit. He's not hard to hit, and I just feel that Joe's they both got good chins. I mean, even the fight that he had Daniel with Joe, he didn't get knocked over. I think it was what it was that terrible eye injury. But I think they've both got good chins, and more importantly, they can both punch. And Joe's got a mega chin, and I think if you can nullify what his weapons are, and his weapon is the punch. I mean, I think they out jab him. I just think they're just one's too young for him. I think the other one's too strong for him.
Do you not think did you not see in that second Usyk fight especially an improved Joshua? And not a Joshua who's as devastating as we've seen, but an improved in terms of the skill set that he brought to the table. It's obviously I'm talking to a biased crowd, but I want to ask the question.
He lost the fight. He didn't win the fight. He didn't, there was no improvement on the first one because he lost. He done what he done in the first fight. He just looks at times, he looks quite vulnerable. I think everyone's got their reasons why Joshua fought how he fought and Usyk fought how he fought. Usyk's probably had more problems than anybody with what's going on in his homeland. So had to prepare for a fight, and he's got family there and God knows what else is going on in the Ukraine, which is a dreadful situation. He had as much pressure as AJ did, but he came through it and did what he had to do. And he was never, in my opinion, in any doubt of him winning that, or losing that fight, I should say. For me, he was always winning the fight.
Interesting. What happens if and when Fury beats Usyk? How quickly does Joe Joyce get that shot? Is Joe Joyce the man who's next in line?
Well, he's got a couple of mandatories there. The WBA mandatory is coming up, which is obviously is with Daniel, and then the WBA is Daniel, and the WBO is Joe. So they're both in good positions. So they'll both fight for the world title. There's no doubt about it, provided they both keep winning. And in the meantime, obviously Tyson's got to win on the third, and he's also got to win to beat Usyk. So I don't want to be looking that far forward, but that's the plan, by the way, that Tyson set out for himself. They're his words, which I have no problem with. But I just think that you don't want to tempt fate. You don't want to tempt fate on the third. Anything can happen with these big guys. Anything. We see it. A walkover was going to be Joshua against Ruiz in the first fight, which turned out to be completely the other way around. And even when Tyson fought Wallin back in Vegas a couple of years ago, he got that bad cut. And maybe anywhere else they may have stopped that fight because of the cut. So you can't take anything for granted. I know Tyson's training for this like he's trained for the Wilder fights. True professionalism. And he really, really knows he needs to be at his best, because when he's at his best, he's unbeatable.
No, absolutely. I know you've mentioned, obviously, Tyson Fury's up there, Dubois, Joe Joyce, but I want to know from you, not just in your stable, but who are the top 5 heavyweights right now? And are we going to see Tyson Fury fight them all? Is he, or is another retirement coming? What are we talking? You're the man in the know.
Well, he did retire. He retired for 5 months. He said he hated every day of it. He said he's fed up putting the bins out, picking up dog crap, and taking the kids to school and all that. He said it's not for him. He wants to be. He don't want it. Top 5, that's a tough one. Well, the number 1 is for me is a no-brainer. That's Tyson. I think he's head and shoulders. I think the next one is probably Usyk. Then I would say Wilder. Then I would say Joe Joyce. And I would also, and you would say this, I would also put in Daniel Dubois.
AJ's not in the top 5 for you, no?
No. He's not in the top 5 of any governing body at the moment. I just, he's not there. But based upon what? Losing his last 2 of his last 3 fights.
I know you're a busy man. You've had a lot going on in the last month. Talk us through some of the big fights you got coming up. What the BT fans have got in store for them.
All right. Oh, blimey, where do we go? You're going to have to prompt me with some of them. Right. The first one, which I'm really pleased is happening, is on the 26th of November. That's at the O2 in London, and we've got Zach Parker in the WBO interim super middleweight fight with John Ryder.
What a fight that is, Parker and Ryder. It's much better than Andrade. It's got much better fight.
It's got fight written all over it, hasn't it? And I think it's going to be a great fight between the two. My opinion of Zach. I think he's like he's been sort of went under the radar, and we managed to, since he's been with us, we've got him out there. And he's done everything that's been asked of him. And John Ryder's been in a couple of fights where you think he could have had the decisions. I think a couple of them were quite
especially
close.
Especially that Callum Smith fight.
Yeah, I think so. And you're right there. So it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a tough fight, but it's one I'm really looking forward to. Really looking forward to that. We've got a show up in Telford, with Liam Davis and the guys on a couple of title fights, and Anthony Yard will have a warm-up fight before his title fight on the 28th of January against Bebatiev. So I'm looking forward to that. That's a great fight. Back in January, there'll be 3 belts on the line. It'll be for me, that's an interesting fight, a very interesting fight.
Yeah. Frank, I know you're going to get to it. We've got Denzel Bentley in a world title fight against Janibek, and of course Terence Crawford, David Avanesian. Talk me through both of those fights, because they're both barnstormers, and we're going to be talking to Denzel later in the show as well.
Well, our guys are on the road. They're both on the road. They were offered these opportunities and grabbed them with both hands. I think with Denzel, I fancy him. I think he is capable of beating this guy. It's a tough fight, but I genuinely think he's got a great shot against him. So and with Denzel, he's that's all he's been craving for, is a shot at the world title. So that's been delivered for. And with David and Avanesian, he's got a massive opportunity as well in fighting Terence Crawford in Crawford's hometown. Tough fight. he's a tough guy, and we've seen him over here quite a few times in good fights. So it's going to be interesting to see, how he does against Crawford. But both the guys got tremendous opportunities, and we're all looking forward to it.
There's so much going on in the boxing scene right now, especially with your stable, Frank. It was a pleasure speaking to you. It's always good to have a little ding dong versus AJ and Tyson. So I'm good friends with AJ, and I really enjoy Tyson as well. So it's nice. I want to see that fight at some point. Hopefully we can get it on. I won't be betting you 10 bags that it's going to happen. No, I've not got that kind of cash.
Well,
BT aren't paying me that well.
Well, what you should do is go and get your friend and bring him over to our office and start.
I'll bring him along with Derek, and we'll have a proper conversation.
No, I don't need that headache. Let's hopefully we'll who knows, we might get it over the line next year sometime. But most important thing is to focus on what we got coming up. And for BT, we've got some great fights coming up and some great fight nights. So we're really pleased where we're going with this, and then we'll kick up. We hit the ground running in the new year as well with Anthony Yard.
Frank, absolute pleasure, bro. I look forward to watching these great fights on BT. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you. All the best, fellas.
Pleasure. We'll be back after the break when we'll be talking to Denzel Bentley about his huge up-and-coming world title fight with Janibek Alim Kanuli, and looking back at that amazing fight between Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall. Hello and welcome back to ChatterBox. In a few moments, we're going to be speaking to British middleweight champion Denzel Bentley. Just 3 years on from working in a Sainsbury's, he heads to the bright lights of Vegas to contest a world title with the most avoided fighter in boxing. Before that, Carl, I just want to go back to that classic fight between Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall. I think it was just what the sport needed after what was a tumultuous few weeks, right?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable, a fantastic bill. If I'm being honest, I think that the chief support in Michaela Mayer and Baumgardner was an unbelievable fight as well. Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall, it was special. It was a special night for female boxing. Claressa Shields looked exceptional, brilliant defensively, brilliant off the ropes. Combination punching was great. Savannah Marshall had her moments in the fight as well, but had a bit of a slow start, and I think that ultimately was the downfall for her. But Claressa Shields we talk about all these adverts for female boxing, but that was just an advert for boxing. It was an unbelievable performance.
Talk me through, because I know you've got experience actually sparring some of the female fighters, and I want to talk about that in terms of the improvements to have you, obviously a two-time world champion sparring these girls. The levels must be incredibly high.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of sparring with Katie Taylor when I was an amateur, actually, on the high performance team, and she would have sparred a lot of the guys in and around, featherweight, bantamweight, lightweight, and it was always like she was so fast. Like her hand speed was unbelievable, and the only time I would have success with Katie is when I kind of lay on her and using the strength and pushed her back. I was a bit stronger than her, but if I stood off her and tried to have a boxing match with her, I used to get the head punched off me, really. So, yeah, she was brilliant and a lovely girl, so dedicated to sport, and probably, obviously there's been women before her, but in terms of what it's doing in the Olympics and the Olympic sport that it is, Katie Taylor probably should take most of the responsibility of getting female boxing into the Olympics. So in that sense, she's a hero to so many people. I've done a bit of sparring with Chantel Cameron as well, who's a different type of fighter than Katie, but in and around the same weight division, and a fight between them two could materialize at some point. And she's not as fast as Katie, but stronger than Katie and punches harder. But both fantastic fighters, and it was nice to do a wee bit of work with them.
Now, how big can women's boxing get? Because it seems to be we've got all women world title fight bills going on. They're selling out stadiums. We had Madison Square Garden. We've got the Copbox. We've got the O2. How big can it get?
It can be huge. It's still, if you look at where it was at 20 years ago, it was nowhere really, and you've girls like Layla Ali and Jane Couch and names that are recognizable now, but 20 years ago, it was nowhere. No one really cared about it. 5 years ago, it was all right, popular enough. But in terms of what's going on today with Katie and Chantel and Savannah and Clarissa and Nickel Adams before them, Terry Harper, the names kind of just roll off your tongue these days. And it's growing and growing, and I think it will continue to grow. There's been talk about obviously changing it to 3-minute rounds, and I was kind of an advocate of that and thinking, maybe it should be 10 3-minute rounds, but I'm not so sure now. I think that's why one of the reasons why the women's fights are so good and so exciting to watch is because they're so quick and they're 2-minute rounds. So rather than 10 3s, what about 12 2s? Something like that maybe. But I'm a fan. I'm a fan of some of the top women in the world. But one of the issues I have at the minute is strength and depth. But that's going to, you've got very good ones and some kind of not so good. But that's going to kind of, that'll sort itself out. It just takes a wee bit of time. But it's flying at the minute, absolutely flying, and will continue to fly for, years and years.
The future's definitely bright. And talking of bright futures, we're joined by the current British middleweight champion, Denzel Bentley. Denzel, listen, we mentioned this earlier, but 3 years ago, you were stacking shelves in Sainsbury's. Now you're heading to the mecca of boxing, Las Vegas. Dream come true, right?
Yeah, man. It's what dreams are made of, man. It's just testament to my hard work and obviously my character, because I'm willing to take these sort of risks to get to this position. So, yeah, I'm happy and I'm excited about it.
Did you always believe, Denzel, you were going to get there? One day you're going to get there. I know you're not there yet. Like, it's still to happen, but you win this fight, you're on top of the world, man.
Yeah, no, I did, but everyone has their doubts. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, how good am I? Am I good enough? I ain't been with anyone at them levels, or what do I need to do to show? Which is why I kept taking risks. Why I took fights early on, especially in lockdown when I was still a prospect. I took that British title fight against Mark Heffron. I took the fight against Cash and came up short because I always believed I could beat these guys and get to that level, but it was just a matter of showing it and how I'm going to showcase it and when I'll be able to get there.
Nice. It's a great mentality. When did you first learn about this fight with Janibek? Because I think you knew about it before that Marcus Morrison fight, right?
Yeah, I did. I found out nearly about 2 weeks before the Morrison fight.
It's a risky fight because you go into that fight thinking, I can't get cut, I can't get injured. There's a lot of pressure when you fighters always say, it's all about tonight. It's all about the next fight. We can't think too far ahead. But surely in your mindset, you're thinking, I'm going to Vegas to fight for a world title. This is crazy.
Yeah, no, 100%. When I got the news, at first I was mad excited. I'm like, oh, snap. But I couldn't even tell anyone because it was like, oh, we don't want it to get out there or make it seem like I'm overlooking Morrison and stuff. But then I think eventually the fight week, I kind of pushed it back in my mind. I just thought, I hadn't accepted it yet. I just said to myself, come through this fight with no injuries. If it's not a long, hard fight, then obviously I'll be able to take it. But I thought, let me still go in there with the same mindset as this is a dangerous fight. I got to win this, otherwise that's off the table anyway. So because I found out a little bit early, I was able to push it back. But if I found out on the week, I think that would have been bothering me a little bit. It's
probably one of them situations where ideally you'd like to find out the day after the fight's just happened, rather than in the lead up to it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'd rather have found out the day after. But where it was such a quick turnaround, I think it was better that I found out a little bit earlier because it's like I can mentally prepare myself that I'm going straight back into camp rather than hitting me in the shock thinking that I'm done and I've got to get straight back into camp. So I guess, it worked out anyway.
The bookies haven't given you much of a chance, but I know your mindset. Do you believe that you can beat him?
100%. Otherwise, I wouldn't take the fight. I'm not going there for a payday or whatever. I'm not going there for that. It's not Canelo. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think I can beat, and even if I wasn't with Canelo, I think I could beat him too. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, I wouldn't take the fight. The fight got offered to me as a voluntary. It's not like I worked to the manager position and now I'm running scared like, oh snap, I'm not ready yet. No, like I want this. I think I've even said before in interviews that I feel like that's a good fight for me. You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't mean he's a great fighter. I think he's a very good fighter. But I think I'll be all right. I think I'll be able to, pull off the win.
It just means more money in the bookies for the boys, Denzel. So it's
exactly. No, 100%. But to be fair, I think most of the fights I've been in, I haven't been favorite anyway. So I'm not. That's not new to me. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm all right.
Now, last time out, obviously, we spoke about you taking out Marcus Morrison in 4 rounds. Then there was those 2 classics with Mark Heffron. that win over him the second time round, it looks even more impressive considering what he's done.
100%. He's moved up a weight. Now he's British, Commonwealth, and IBF European champion. Like that's good. That's great for him. Like, do you know what I mean? He's achieved the goal. He tried, third time lucky, and he's done it. So I'm happy for him just as a person, but as a former opponent, it must look good on me. But I don't think I got credit for that win when it happened, and that's all right. It don't really matter. But as it goes on, I think like when you look back at it, like you see that, oh wow, Denzel beat him. You know what I'm saying? Like the first one was a draw. I think I won that anyway, but the second one I beat him convincingly. And I think as it goes on,
What's going on, my brother? Oh, sorry.
Just mad people everywhere. Mad people everywhere.
Hey, it's gym life. It's gym life.
But yeah, anyway, yeah. So I think as he goes on and does these things and keeps producing these amazing knockouts, he's boosted my resume, which looks good for me. So go do your thing, Mark.
You're a celeb in the gym and outside the gym. That's what we like to see, bro.
Yeah, people are just mad. That's all it is.
Listen, the only blip in your career you would say is probably that defeat by Felix Cash. Obviously, very disappointing. But what did you learn from that? Did you learn more from that than I guess some of the victories that you've had?
Bad loss. I've learned most of what I don't want to fall like that ever again. Like it's not like I lost in a grueling 12-round fight and I can get a pat on the back. That was a bad loss. I'll be honest. I'll be the first to say it. Like there was nothing to take from that apart from what was you doing. But it's just allowed me to just take a step back, look at the game, realize, okay, it's not that easy. I've got to change a few things. I've got to sort out myself, make sure I'm the best I can be. If I feel a certain way, I've got to be vocal about it. I've got to make sure I feel 100% every time I step in that ring. I've got to make sure I'm hitting the weight right. So I've got a nutritionist, because before I was just freestyling everything. You know what I'm saying? I picked up a few sessions. I realized I can train more, because there's no way me that at that point felt like I was a world level fighter, as I said in the press conference, should be losing like that to anybody. You know what I mean? So it just made me look at myself and feel like I'm not doing enough. I've got to do more.
Not one person can question your bottle or your heart or your desire to go and be great. Obviously, Janibek is probably the most avoided fighter around for a reason. But Denzel, thanks so much. Get back to your pals in the gym. Unfortunately, we didn't get the shout to go to Vegas. I might have to join that group chat. You better invite me soon. I'm sure me and Carl will be there, no doubt. Listen, if I'm not there, I'll be rooting for you from the sofa.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good luck, Denzel. All the best, man.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.
When we come back, we'll be talking to boxing journalist and broadcaster Tris Dixon about the allegations of drug use in boxing and what can be done to restore the sport's reputation. Welcome back to the final part of ChatterBox. Tonight's episode has absolutely flown by, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by boxing journalist Tris Dixon. I want to open up with Eubank Ben. I know it was a fight that we were all buzzing to see, and we talked about it at length. I was at the press conference. We were just getting ready for it to start, but it looked like we may never get to see it now. You're a man in the know. Tell us what we know about this whole episode.
The fight fell apart with just a couple of days to go in the end. You mentioned the press conference. They ended up obviously announced at the press conference that the fight was off because of a positive finding on Conor Benn's VADA test. And obviously that, I suppose, in many ways should have been that. It turns out that came to light to all the, in inverted commas, necessary parties on September 23rd. But they still left it to the 11th hour to cancel / postpone the event. As you said, it was a fight we were all looking forward to for various reasons, not just because of the fathers, not just because of the grudge, but because of this catchweight scenario, which obviously after what's happened now, it becomes even more of a talking point. But obviously with Conor Benn going up in weight and Chris Eubank Jr. coming down in weight, we didn't know where the advantage would be, whether Eubank would still be just too big, or if the advantage would slip towards Conor Benn with Eubank having to drain himself, as Eubank was telling us on a regular basis. As it turned out, we didn't get to find out. We've been told that we probably will get to find out at some time or another. I'm sure we will discuss that. But that's the lay of the land, and we're still waiting for confirmation. Ben says he's going to clear his name. Eddie's talked about due process being needed, and obviously that is required one way or another, innocent or guilty. We need to get to the bottom of what's happened.
Just to be clear, we don't know the full details of what's been going on. However, we're just talking about what has been reported in the media.
How can it be? How can we get this situation, Tris, where someone fails a drug test by you on a VADA test, but that's not acknowledged by UCAD, and the fight can potentially still go ahead?
So interesting question, Carl. And I don't claim to be a massive expert on doping, although I do know bits, obviously having been around boxing for a long period of time and studied a lot of these cases quite closely. Obviously, VADA, the test VADA did could have been done on a different day to UCAD. And so obviously, if they'd found trace amounts, then maybe a day or so later he would have been clear. And so if UCAD had tested him a couple of days later, then maybe the sample that he produced would have been different. So you can say that. Also, VADA is a different testing agency. I'm sure that both agencies probably do test for clomiphene, which is a female fertility drug which was what trace amounts were found of with Ben's VADA test. But VADA is very comprehensive, and it does test for more substances than UCAD. And people do say that VADA is the gold standard, and it really is because of the amount of things it does test for. And obviously, when we look at these positive tests that have littered the landscape for the last few years, the majority of them have been found by VADA.
For me, trace amounts means an incredibly small amount of something. Do you believe that there's any way that this could have inadvertently got into his food, into a protein shake and stuff like that? Because his strength and conditioning coach is well renowned amongst the boxing industry. He's somebody who's worked with a lot of major fighters. There's never been any kind of claims of cheating or drug use. How does that happen? And is a trace amount mean you're completely guilty, or is it a trace amount that it's one size fits all?
Well, I suppose, it's easy for us to say from the outside looking in that it's a one size fits all. Like if it's a trace amount, then it's in your system, right? But I'm sure that there are instances where there are loopholes and grey areas, and it's not as black and white as it seems. However, the experts have said about clomiphene that there is no way that it comes into your system via contamination or anything like that, because it is a female fertility drug, and it is used by people in the male population to increase their levels of testosterone.
We've had this before with Canelo's situation, who got a 6-month ban in 2018 after traces of clenbuterol, which he blamed on tainted meat, and it never seems to get mentioned now. So, is it the situation where if Ben has an excuse similar to this one, or whether you believe it or not, is it something that can be forgotten quickly, or should it be forgotten quickly?
That's a great question. Because Canelo's far from the only one. Obviously, the Hall of Shame is going back and back and back now in terms of boxing and our track record, and it's really not starting. It's really not looking great. I can't remember the last time anyone actually held their hands up and said, "Okay, you got me." We've heard these excuses, whether it's wild boar, tainted meat, protein shakes, contamination. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. When is and also you've got to factor in this. Whenever this sort of thing happens, people's nearest and dearest, family, relatives, trainers pile in and say, "Oh, we know him. He'd never do it." And he's a clean athlete. I know him. I think the thing is, this is something that I think is so shameful for people that do it. I don't think they would tell anybody. I don't think that they would go on stuff and say to their best friend or even their partner, certainly not their coach, who they want to respect them, and say, "Oh, do you know what? I'm on stuff."
That's such a good point, Tris, that everybody jumps on board and says, "I know this guy would never do it," but if you're taking it, are you telling anybody? You're not even telling your wife. You're literally keeping that to yourself. I think it's a sense of, well, a few reasons why you would keep it to yourself. It's shameful, really. You'd be embarrassed that you're having to do this. If you'd asked me 5 or 6 years ago, I don't think it was an issue really in boxing. I thought there was maybe one or two of maybe top guys with money doing it. But now I believe that it's more rife. I think that figure that he talked about is massively inflated. But I think there's more people doing it than we would like to believe.
There's no deterrent. Like, I would like to think that if someone is guilty of taking performance enhancing drugs, I would love for trainers to stop working with them. I would love for promoters to stop putting them on their shows, rather than just have to rely on bans being handed down. Like, take an ethical and moral stance against these guys.
It's happened many times before where promoters try to put fights on, and I imagine that if this was a lesser fight, guys getting paid 10 or 15 or 20 grand, then they make an example of these boys. But because there was so much money to be made in this fight, then they try to, push on with the fight, and it's absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Very informative discussion. Now, what happens if the B sample comes back negative? That's the big question. And I mean, it's happened probably one in 1,000 times. But do we all hold our hands up and say sorry?
Great question. I think no, because I don't think. The people that have personally attacked Conor Benn probably have to hold their hands up and say sorry. I think the people that attack the promoter and the promotion probably don't, because ethically, the right thing to do was to wait for the B sample. So, I mean, yes, hold your hands up. If you attacked Conor Benn and said, yes, you're a cheat, throw the book at him when the B sample hadn't come back, then yeah, maybe you jumped the gun. But in terms of the promotion and how it was run, I think if Eddie Hearn could get that one back, he probably would, right?
No,
here's another question: if the B sample comes back negative, why do you override the B sample with the A sample that was positive?
Well, that's a great question, Carl, and that would be one for the guys at VADA. And no, but seriously, it would be for them to explain, like, how's this happened and what are the options and which one should we put more stock in. But yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because how do you know?
Fair. It's a question that we'll ask when that B sample finally comes back. Do you think we'll ever see that fight, honestly, between all of us?
Money talks, so my gut instinct says yes. But for me, and I think that it will be a huge fight, but for me, it's somewhat tarnished given the foul taste that was left from the previous effort to get it on.
Okay, thank you guys. That's all we got time for. I'd like to thank my brilliant co-presenter, Carl Frampton, plus our ever exciting guest, Derek Chisora, Frank Warren, Denzel Bentley, and of course you, Tris Dixon. We'll be back next month.